Hi, my name is Shelby. I'm an environmental scientist with a degree in environmental science, and I've been trying to live a sustainable life for over a decade now. And there have been moments over the course of the last 10 plus years that I am proud of. And there are also moments in my journey to being the best environmentalist that I can be that I'm not so proud of. Unfortunately for me, much of that is documented on the internet.
Basically, we're not going to eat anything unless we already have it on our shelves at the house or we find it in a dumpster.
There was an era on the internet, and I believe just like in people who care about sustainability for one reason or another, there was an era for those folks where the only thing and the most important thing, the pinnacle of being an environmentalist, was trying to fit all of your trash into a jar. I think the most unfortunate part of this era of the internet is that we really didn't address at all the systemic issues about why you cannot live zero waste in a society that's not built for it, and how we got to a society that makes it impossible for you to make choices that are better for you and the planet. Several years out from that, I want to reflect on the things that I no longer do because they were a little bit extreme and honestly way more effort than the impact of those actions was worth. And some of the things maybe we just got wrong, because there is a difference in being a scientist, an activist, and trying to live a perfectly sustainable life. Those things can happen separately, they can happen together, but we're going to talk mostly about this one over here and things that we did that were not necessary. I no longer shop at zero waste stores, and the reason for this is, well, we don't have one in Austin anymore, and I think that that is the case for a lot of zero waste stores around the country. They have since closed, and not only due to the fact that the lifestyle of living a zero waste and buying everything package free was, again, impossible in our current system, but also because COVID. I don't know where the zero waste and or sustainable living movement would be had it not been for 2020, but I don't shop at zero waste stores anymore for that reason and because they don't exist. I no longer avoid buying certain foods because of their packaging. This was a significant, I don't know if the word is pillar to my life when I was trying to reduce my waste, but I would stop buying foods or go so far out of my way to find something that was package free. And the biggest example that always comes to mind is berries, because berries are impossible to find without packaging. They always come in the little plastic clamshells, and even at the farmer's market, they usually came with plastic. And I will never forget like trying to go to so many different farm stands and farmers markets and grocery stores and looking in towns the next 3 towns over to see if they maybe had something that was package free. In my mind, there was a part of me that knew that wasn't right. Like, I've always been quite passionate about talking about the entire like environmental impact of something, and when you're driving to the next town to avoid a plastic clamshell that in theory you could reuse or recycle, that calculating the environmental impact of all those things is just not that simple. And also, like, I feel me now would stop and be like, why are you doing this for your own individual footprint? Like, at the end of the day, you're one person, and the problem is the system, the way it is set up. But like, I obviously felt I had no control over the system. To some degree, that's true. But I feel like now I look at it from a perspective that's like, no, the system needs to change, and me putting in so much effort and time and money to buy something without packaging is not really where my time, energy, or money is best spent. So I no longer avoid foods because of packaging. That was a time to be alive. These first 3 are all really related, but number 3 is I no longer shop in the bulk bins. And that's not to say completely. A lot of bulk bins closed as a result of the pandemic, as I said. A lot of them just didn't come back. I guess a lot of them decided it didn't make financial sense. One of the places that I would buy things all the time in bulk, because it was the only place I could find oil package free in the bulk bins, was Whole Foods. They didn't bring back their bulk bins in the same capacity that they were pre-COVID. We do still have a few good bulk places here in Austin, and I will buy some things through those bulk bins, specifically if they're grown locally and organically. And there are some things like that in my bulk bins, but there are a lot of things that aren't. And now it makes a lot more sense to me to support local, to support organic, to support upcycled ingredients, to support, you know, things like that, than it is to just be like, can I get this thing package free? That's such a small-minded way to think, and I just don't think that way anymore. And I think earlier environmentalist Shelby, like 2016 through 2019 maybe, Shelby knew that we should be taking the entire supply chain into consideration and that there were so many more things to consider than just plastic. But on the internet, you would literally get torn apart during those times if you were online as an out environmentalist and you were using plastic. In my mind, if I can support a business that like itself has zero waste warehouses and they have carbon neutral shipping and you can sort on their website by environmental concerns like upcycled foods and regenerative farming, that is so much more important to me than just worrying about the packaging. And that's why I love Thrive Market. They are a sponsor of this channel. They have been for years. I've been using them for years, and I absolutely love that I have the ability to support a business like that, whose goal, by the way, is to be the first climate positive grocery store in the world, because we all have to eat, okay? Whether it comes in plastic or it doesn't, we have to eat. And if we're going to be giving our money to something to support that thing, I think it makes the most sense to buy it from the most ethical and sustainable brand that we can. I personally think that that brand is Thrive Market. I can sort on their website for so many different environmental concerns. You can first of all sort by vegan. You can sort by plastic neutral, B Corp certified, fair trade, sustainably farmed, regenerative farmed, upcycled ingredients. The list goes on. And they have so many of the things that we have to buy, like organic groceries and snacks. They have supplements. They have eco-friendly cleaning supplies, pet food, non-toxic beauty and personal care items. They have wine. They even have frozen things. Honestly, they have everything you could ever need. So if you, like me, think it makes the most sense to support a brand that themselves has a zero waste warehouse, carbon neutral shipping, and the goal of being the world's first climate positive grocery store, you can check out Thrive Market's biggest sale of the summer. They're taking up to 25% off 2,500 plus healthy items of their whole store. And on top of that, if you go to thrivemarket.com/ShelbyOrm or the link in the top of the description, you can get 30% off of your first order plus a free gift up to $60. You can find all that information at the link at the top of the description, and we will keep going with the things I no longer do. Another thing that is so interesting about the conversation that was happening in the world of zero waste at the time was that we definitely were recognizing that most people didn't have access to live this lifestyle, a zero waste lifestyle, right? And one of the ways that, looking back, I can see that so clearly now is how often we talked about how to buy different materials that were better than plastic, right? So we knew most people couldn't buy all of their things plastic free, so we would start talking about how aluminum is better, or paper is better, or glass is better. And so I would prioritize buying the things that I couldn't buy package free in any sort of packaging that just wasn't plastic. And a lot of times this came down to glass, because glass was one of the easiest things to reuse. At the time it was like, well, I can reuse this glass jar if I buy this in glass. And like, how many glass jars realistically in your life do you need? Can you reuse? Can you store? But I no longer prioritize like any type of packaging over plastic. Like, basically, if it's not plastic, I think it's okay. That is no longer the choice that I make. I also, as a scientist, have analyzed several documented studies, data that shows that plastic sometimes is the best option, especially because our recycling system, specifically in the US, is so broken that even glass only has a 30% chance of being recycled, whereas we know plastic has like less than 10% chance. And like, the difference between there, yeah, it's significant. But at the end of the day, if the thing is most likely to end up in landfill, which is what that means, then choosing the most sustainable option apart from the packaging makes a whole lot of sense, because in many cases plastic can be lighter to ship, it can preserve food a lot better, it's less energy intensive to create and to recycle. So at the end of the day, sometimes plastic is the most sustainable option, and I know that now. So I no longer just think about, well, is there any packaging I can get this thing in without it being plastic? Because it's just not that simple. I no longer give up things I love in the name of the planet. There was also this time online where shaming people, average everyday people, for flying was like one of the main topics of conversations online. And there was a time in my life where I was like, well, I can't travel. Travel cannot be a regular part of my goals in life, of the things I want to do, of the things I enjoy, because it's bad for the planet. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of things that are bad for the planet, and there's a lot of people out there that do terrible things to this planet, and I'm doing my best. Like, I'm literally doing so much in my life and advocacy work in my community in terms of staying in contact with my representatives. I think I'm allowed to fly sometimes. Now, do I think anybody should be like doing the private jet thing or jet setting multiple times a month and all that kind of stuff? No. Okay, listen. Now I just limit myself to one non-work flight a year, and this year I don't even think I'm going to be doing that unless something comes up and I can buy it with points, because flights are on my no-buy list for 2025. There was a time where online, if you talked about doing something that wasn't seen as sustainable and you were calling yourself an environmentalist, well, then you're a liar and a fraud and a hypocrite. And yeah, I just no longer allow myself to get so caught up in things that I give up something that I love, that reinvigorates me and gives me enough hope and joy to keep me going on all the other things I'm working on. And I don't think you should either, but that's just my opinion. I try really hard no longer to look for the product that is marketed as sustainable, but instead to look for things that are quality. So a great example of this is that I recently had to buy a new nozzle for my back porch hose, and I've gone through a few of them because I would try to buy things that are made from recycled materials, or I would look for things that were secondhand. That's also a thing I would do. And throughout the last several years, I've noticed that brands got away a lot with just marketing something as being sustainable because it used recycled materials or plant-based materials, or it wasn't plastic, right? And that doesn't really make a product just like sustainable on its own. If we can make things that are high quality and use recycled materials, that would be great. But that has not been my experience with this nozzle, okay? Now, instead of just focusing on trying to find something that is marketed as sustainable, I'll go specifically, okay? I don't know if this is a well-kept secret, but this is my secret. I'll go on to Reddit, Buy It for Life, and I don't use Reddit literally at all, except for this. And then you just search the thing that you need, and then you just buy the thing that's gonna last you like a really long time. So I did that with my nozzle recently, and I got one that was made, I think it's made of brass, and it's gonna last me for the rest of my life, rather than keep having to replace these plastic ones that start leaking, and then I'm wasting water, and then it's a whole thing. I don't avoid sunscreen because of packaging. Yeah, that's something I did in my life at one point. I would search high and low trying to find the sustainable version of whatever it is that I was trying to buy. Specifically in terms of sunscreen, I became really passionate about skin protection, sun protection after I had a cancer scare a few years ago. Before that, I was just so like in my head about buying sunscreen that was in not sustainable packaging. Like I tried to do this whole video on sunscreen that came in like aluminum tins, which made it so hard to put on and you had to use so much. And honestly, at the end of the day, now looking back at it, I realized it was so expensive. But at the time I was like, no, if something is better for the planet, I'm willing to pay for it. Which like, I still feel that way. If something's actually better for the planet, I am willing to pay for it. But at the same time, like, girl, protect your skin. That matters so much more. Now I'm really into UPF clothing, and I don't worry about packaging when it comes to sunscreen at all. But that was a phase in my life, yeah. I don't make skincare. I don't attempt to make skincare anymore. I do love my skincare. It's a regular part of my routine. It's probably the only thing I do on a regular basis that is like my self-care routine. And I don't even think about trying to make it myself anymore to make it more sustainable. I understand like things that are non-comedogenic now and materials that are not actually refined to actually do something on your skin. Like if a skincare product says it has some kind of seed oil in it, that doesn't mean they literally just took the oil from the seed and put it in that product. They like refined it in some way that actually makes it work. There's a lot more to consider, okay, than the things I was considering back in the day when I was being shamed into making my own skincare. We don't do that anymore. Something else I did was wash my laundry with a berry that was like a nut. Some people call them soap nuts, some people call them soap berries. Honestly, there was no way for me to test if these were like super effective because I wasn't washing clothes that were like super soiled. Like I wasn't trying to remove stains with the soap berries, and like my workout clothes, they weren't that seriously like disgusting. So I never really was able to test like, is this actually working? Like I don't have a lab in my home to test how much grime it's getting off of my clothes. I feel like at that point I could have just put my clothes in there without like soap at all, and it would have done the same thing because water and like swishing your clothes around is gonna get them pretty clean whether you have soap nuts or not. Right? But that is one of the things I still do is I try to buy from sustainable brands, specifically just try to buy from brands that are not conglomerates. Like I just don't want any part of that as much as I can avoid it, even though that keeps becoming a problem for me. Brands that use sustainable ingredients, brands that package things without unnecessary packaging, I guess that don't package things with unnecessary packaging. All of that stuff is still incorporated into my routine, and specifically with my laundry, I do that. Like I don't just go and buy like a big plastic jug of Tide. I still want to support brands that are doing good things for the planet, but I don't use the soap berries anymore. Another thing is I no longer avoid coloring my hair. And I still feel a little bit weird about this one because it is so unnecessary and I have feelings about it. Like I think just as someone who cares about things, I don't want to be participating too much in something that's just unnecessary. But for a long time, I avoided coloring my hair specifically because I was like, well, that's unnecessary and you're an environmentalist and so you're not doing your hair. Now I let myself do my hair twice a year, and I think like my regular routine now will be to do this balayage in the spring, and then in the fall, I'll do like an orangish color like I did last year. That still feels really manageable, still feels like I'm not destroying the planet. I get to support my favorite salon here in Austin, Wild Desert, which I'll be hosting an event with them coming up really soon. Go follow me on Instagram so that you can see when we do that. I'm so excited about it. I do it in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm destroying the planet, and also it just helps me really show up in the world in a way that I feel a lot better about myself. And as I am still working on my anxiety issues, social anxiety issues, my self-confidence, all those things, it's nice to not have one more thing to worry about when I look look in the mirror and go, I really just wish I had like a little bit of color in my hair. I no longer compost cat poop. Can you believe that was a thing I was doing at one point? I had a really small backyard in my old house where I was doing cat poop composting, growing vegetables, and I had chickens. Why did I think that was a good idea? I mean, I swear it was like my backyard was so tiny. The amount of actual land space we had, because we had like a retaining wall, we had the garden beds. It was so small looking back at it now. Now looking back on it, I was literally eating tomatoes that were growing maybe 15 feet from where I was composting cat poop. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't think I need to even explain why I'm not doing that anymore. It's dangerous and unnecessary. It's not that serious. It's not that deep. Something else I used to do on this channel a lot was dumpster dive. And I still do this occasionally, but not on the internet. Sharing my dumpster diving journey on the internet is like kind of a huge part of how I started my channel. But over time, the audience I was gaining was really more interested in just getting free stuff and commenting on how much they wanted free stuff. And it started feeling like I was just building a audience of hyper consumers. And even though I always tried to drive home the message of like, these corporations are destroying perfectly good things that could go to people, they're so wasteful, fuck corporations, that message never really came through. I never was building the audience like that. So we pivoted to something much more in your face, talking about how to live sustainably. But all that to say, yeah, I don't dumpster dive on a regular basis anymore. I do it during the winter because I'm not trying to be outside in the heat in the summer, you know what I mean? But that's something that I just don't do as often anymore. There were times in my life where I ate only food that I found in the dumpster for a week, and that's the type of stuff I don't do anymore. Oh, you know, it's a fun fact. When the underconsumption cord trend was happening, I made videos on TikTok about it, and I ended up in this compilation of this woman's video who people kept DMing me, telling me I was in it. And she was basically just criticizing people participating in the trend. It was weird. She was like shaming people for trying to be part of this movement that was convincing people to consume less. It was a weird vibe. Anyway, she put me in the thumbnail and put me in the video, and in the video I talk about this mirror that I still use to this day that I found in the dumpster. And she's like, see, I think it's fine to like use things that like replace things when they're broken because the mirror has a crack in it. It's still been functioning just fine for literally like 8 years. And she's like, and I'm not saying this girl got this out of the trash. And I was like, awkward, I literally did. What a time to be alive.
Sometimes it's just trash, and it's okay if it stays in the trash.
I no longer spend my time and energy on people who are not going to change. I used to spend so much time thinking that I needed to try to get the people who were closest to me to care about the things that I care about in the same capacity that I do. I needed to really shift their mindsets, and that was my mission in life. This channel and also my work in my community has really made me realize that that's not the most effective way to get things done. I don't spend my time and my energy on that anymore because, fun fact, a study that I saw said that I think it's you only need 3.5% of the population affected by XYZ thing to actually be advocating on its behalf to have success. I think that comes from Harvard. And so I started realizing that the people who I've been talking to for years about trying to care about the state of our planet and the direction that we're headed, that we're not changing their mind, was just a waste of time. And I have been able to influence people around me. Like, the only thing that has ever influenced anyone around me is just by living by example, like them seeing that like I'm serious about what I'm saying. That's the only thing that's ever changed anyone's like attitude. I wouldn't say like they changed their lifestyle completely, but like it changes their attitude. It opens their mind a little bit. But I don't spend my time trying to convince my like family members who are supportive of awful things that they should care, because I have spent so much time doing that and it's just not successful. So I channel that energy into areas where people are at least open to hearing the message, where people may not have all the information yet, but they are sympathetic and empathetic to the cause, and also just talking to the people who have power to actually make those changes here in my city. Focus my energy there instead. And I don't judge others anymore, at least out loud. But I don't say anything. I keep it to myself. I don't say anything because judging others out loud like that has never led to anything productive in my experience. And I no longer give into my guilt or shame about doing something wrong. That was so much of my experience on the internet talking about sustainable living, was thinking I had to be perfect and feeling awful if I wasn't. And that is just not even, that doesn't, I said this the other day when someone asked me, how do I deal with guilt from using something single use? I don't. And I still feel like actually over the course of years of doing this, it's actually really easy to avoid single use stuff. It's just my like second nature to me now. But when or if that happens to me, like guilt, it's not even crossing my consciousness anymore. And I'm really grateful for that, because it allows me to focus that mental capacity that I would have spent spiraling and being hard on myself. It allows me to use that energy and focus it somewhere else. I only have so much energy. I'm actually a relatively low energy person, unfortunately, I'm realizing. And spending my mental energy and my capacity and my literal time on shame or guilt is so unproductive, and I've got shit to do. I've got visions for this city and my neighborhood and the country and the world. I'm gonna spend my time on that instead of making myself feel guilty about a plastic straw. Stop it. Well, those are the 15 things I no longer do as someone who has been trying to live a sustainable lifestyle for over a decade. I hope that you learned something. I hope that this makes you feel like you can do stuff, but you don't have to be perfect, because there's this little saying that's like, we don't need 100 people doing zero waste perfectly. We need 1 million people doing it imperfectly. And I think we can take that sentiment and apply it to activism and apply it to community work and apply it to being in your local government and volunteering and also living a sustainable lifestyle, because supporting brands that are not conglomerates taking over the world, I do think is a worthwhile thing to do. So I think take all of this information, incorporate it into your lifestyle, hit the subscribe button, because that's basically what I do. Talk about how to incorporate this sort of mindset into your lifestyle so that you can live a more sustainable life, and keep in mind that you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye, guys.